I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to everyone who's joined us online for this session of Henley Partners' 15th Annual Global Citizenship Conference. My name's Juliet Foster, and the title of today's webinar is Visa Policy and Global Mobility: How St. Kitts and Nevis and other countries have successfully improved visa-free access for their passport holders. Now, yes, it is a long title, but it is a big subject because although international travel is gradually freeing up, the global pandemic effectively shut down the world for a protracted period of time, effectively rendering the idea of travel freedom as a bit of a pipe dream. But people have not lost the urge to want to travel, and investment migration is flourishing. Many countries that host citizenship by investment programs have strategically prioritized visa openness, which in turn benefits both their citizens and enhances the competitiveness of their investment migration programs. So joining me on today's panel to discuss the multifaceted potential of visa openness are the Honourable Mark Brantley. He's the Premier of Nevis and the Minister of Foreign Affairs for St. Kitts and Nevis. Also Dominic Volek, who's Group Head of Private Clients at Henley Partners, and Mehdi Kadiri, Managing Partner and Head of North America at Henley Partners. So gentlemen, welcome to you all. And Dominic, let me start first with you, because given your position in the company, it's fair to say that you have a very deep understanding of what it is that investors are actually looking for when they're considering investment migration. So given that, I want you to talk us through the concept of travel freedom and global mobility and how they relate to visa openness and residence and citizenship by investments. Clearly, there's a story going on here. So tell us all about it. What is going on?
Thanks, Juliet. The reasons why investors around the world would consider an investment migration program can range from a myriad of reasons. So focusing on today's topic, the big one and historically, which has been the driver for the industry at large and for the demand, has been travel freedom and global access to various markets around the world, whether that's for business purposes or, of course, for leisure. So we've always seen the demand coming from those countries where travel freedom is rather restricted for those nationals. On a quarterly basis, we release the Henley Passport Index, which is the original authoritative ranking of all of our passports. So what it does is it looks at the travelability or the number of destinations that each of our passports can access without a prior visa. So either visa free or visa on arrival. We've been doing that now for 16 years. It's based on exclusive data from IATA, the International Air Transport Association. And so, it makes for interesting reading, because what we've typically seen from a travel freedom perspective is those applicants on what is the bottom of the index, where their passports are very restrictive, they're typically looking at participating in the various investment migration programs that offer them access to a better passport, whether that's an alternative or if they're allowed a second passport. And of course, the Caribbean is incredibly interesting in that regard, because they're all independent Commonwealth countries. And as long as, there's various other benefits of being citizens, but one of them is access to the passport, which provides visa-free travel to Europe and the UK. And so this has always been a big driver for the industry and continues to do so. Even in COVID, where travel and tourism was a lot less than had been expected, we see the demand spiking again now as travel starts to open up.
Let's follow on from some of the points that were made there, because this is where you come into the conversation, Premier Brantley, because St. Kitts and Nevis, it's a bit of a poster boy when it comes to improving visa access for its citizens. So what are the changes that have been occurring over the years? Clearly, you've noticed them and you've been able to use them to your benefit.
Well, Juliet, thank you very much. And let me first say that it's an absolute pleasure to be a part of this panel and to discuss what's going on here in St. Kitts and Nevis and what's going on with the investment migration process globally. First of all, I think there's a philosophical issue here. And we need to consider that purely by accident of birth, some individuals are privileged to be able to travel the globe, and other individuals do not have that privilege. And so if you happen to be born in the United States or in Finland or in Denmark, then you automatically get certain travel rights that others who are born in other places do not have. So I start from that premise. Where we are concerned here in St. Kitts and Nevis as a small country, we have been very clear, and my mandate as foreign minister has been very clear, that my role is to strengthen relations with existing friends and to find new friends. Part of that has been a very proactive approach to accessing visa-free arrangements with various countries around the world. I'm very proud to say that in 2006, when Henley Partners started their passport index, we were ranked at 40. Today, we are at 26, and I'm predicting that we will go even lower as we continue in our efforts in this regard. Since 2015, since I've been foreign minister, we've actually added some 29 new countries that our people can access visa-free. Our approach is to do this for our citizenry. The fact that our citizens who acquire citizenship through investment also benefit is, of course, an added bonus. But for us, it's all about ensuring that our citizens are allowed to travel the globe without let or hindrance, to go to Africa, to go to Europe, to go to South America, to go to wherever they wish without let or hindrance. In fact, I say it all the time that my desire is that our people will ultimately get to a stage where they can put a blindfold on, throw a dart at the global map, and wherever it lands, they can travel there visa-free. And so that is really and has been our approach to this. I think that it is a remarkable thing that for a small country, our passport now gives access at the last count to 159 countries and territories around the world. And I think that speaks volumes, not only to what we've been able to do, but to the respect and regard that other countries have for us as a stable democracy based on the rule of law, and which really gave the world, back in 1984, this idea of citizenship by investment. I think that it is a remarkable thing, perhaps not often said, but needs to be said, that St. Kitts and Nevis really was the pioneer in this particular environment. And since 1984, all those decades ago, saw the benefit of moving in this particular direction. And the rest of the world has followed, and firms such as Henley Partners have come along and refined what was an idea, but that idea emanated from us, and we're very proud that we've given the world this notion of investment by migration.
Some interesting themes there, and I'd like to apply that to North America, which is, Mehdi, the area that you serve. Now, have you also witnessed this big rise in investment migration? And what are the insights you've been able to glean from that? And more specifically, what are the forces driving that growth? And are there particular programs that are attracting the most attention?
First of all, I would like to thank you very much for inviting us today. It is certainly a period of immense and sustained growth globally and in North America in particular. Let's start with some interesting statistics. In terms of overall web-based inquiries, big spike in Q3 2020, 63.1% up, Q1 2021, 35.5% up, and Q3 2021, 26.1% up. America remains second biggest driver of inquiries after India. And if things continue at current pace, USA likely to exceed last year's level of inquiries on top of a year of massive growth in 2020. To be exact, 208% more inquiries in 2020 compared to 2019. Now, interesting as well, Canada had a 47% growth in 2020 versus 2019. And 2021 was another bumper year with 54% growth already by mid-October. In terms of the top 5 most popular programs US citizens inquires about are Portugal, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Montenegro, and Austria. St. Kitts has been and is the most popular CBI Caribbean program with US citizens by a long stretch. The top 5 programs for Canadians, fairly similar with Portugal Golden Visa, St. Kitts and Nevis at the top, next Austria, Turkey, Montenegro, Switzerland, and St. Lucia. Again, St. Kitts remained the most popular CBI country program. In terms of growth drivers, to name a couple, first, the US government mismanagement of pandemic last year, and now tax reforms in both USA and Canada. St. Kitts also announced some changes to its program in 2021, which has attracted a lot of attention. Another important factor with our client is the reputation of the program they choose. And St. Kitts and Nevis has been the pioneer in this industry with the longest track record in the CBI history, which goes a long way with individuals who are looking for peace of mind when choosing a reputable program.
So I guess the key point is that St. Kitts and Nevis, they're doing everything right on the strength of those numbers, and certainly the trail that they're blazing. But Dominic, come back into the conversation and let's stay with St. Kitts and Nevis. Which other countries, from your experience, have actually been focusing on open up their visa policies and seeing their scores on the Henley Passport Index improve as a result? Because clearly, as we heard from Premier Brantley, it does feed through, and that in turn sends out a very positive message elsewhere.
It's a very important part in terms of what makes, one investment migration program more attractive than the other. As you know, there's a lot of other factors, but of course, the power of your passport is certainly an important one. If we look in the Caribbean, as Premier Brantley said, St. Kitts has done an amazing job over the years in terms of climbing up the index. If you look at the top of the index, it's still very much dominated by those members of the European Union. Very strong passports from a travel perspective, and visa-free access to most countries that you would want to enter for either business or leisure. The other big climber, the biggest, in the 16-year history of the index, is where I'm currently sitting in the United Arab Emirates. So the UAE has climbed up 47 spots in the last 10 years, and now currently sits in 16th position. It was sitting in just 67th 10 years ago. So that's been a big climber. But of course, the investment migration industry is also a very competitive one. And so there are a lot of country options available in different destinations where one can acquire residence and citizenship. And so the strength of the passport is a key element to focus on. And those countries that are very proactive in that space and actively go out and look to negotiate new visa waiver agreements will certainly come out on top.
And Premier Brantley, when we put this in the bigger context, you can't get away from COVID and the impact of the pandemic. I referenced this in my introduction, the fact that it changed the way that we travel, even if the appetite for travel itself hasn't diminished. But the other interesting offshoot coming out of that is the economics. So for example, let me cite you the IMF report in July. Now, it focused on your country and it said that St. Kitts and Nevis had actually fared much better than most countries in the preceding 18 months, and that citizenship by investment funds were actually central to staving off economic disaster, which I guess translates as a lot of countries were hit badly by COVID-19, but St. Kitts and Nevis was one of the few countries that actually turned an opportunity, or rather a crisis, into an opportunity. And that is the heart of the question. How was it that St. Kitts and Nevis was able to negotiate this period of extreme turbulence so successfully that you've come out at the other end?
I think that's an excellent question. You are absolutely correct that COVID-19 decimated economies around the world. It impacted lives and livelihoods. And St. Kitts and Nevis was no different. St. Kitts and Nevis, like many of our Caribbean neighbors, depends very heavily on tourism. And of course, tourism ground to a halt. We had to close our borders. Flights stopped coming. Cruise ships stopped coming. And so many of our people were out of work. Many people who work in the hospitality industry, our taxi drivers, our tour operators, they were all adversely affected. What we had was a significant other string to our bow in terms of our economic matrix, and that was citizenship by investment. If you were to ask what saved us during this pandemic, I would say citizenship by investment. And for many who are critics of these programs, I think that this is a clear example of how a properly run program with a proper reputation and a proper focus on due diligence and safety and security, that program can actually redound to the benefit of the common man in these countries. And that's exactly what we were able to do here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Over the years that we did well from citizenship by investment, we were able to amass considerable reserves. And so, just like in biblical times, if you recall, when there was a time of famine and a time of plenty, during the time of plenty, you stored up grain for the time of famine. And so, in our situation, when things were really good, we were able to put away funds. And so we had a cushion that we could then draw on to provide relief to our people over this past 18 months. I'm happy to say that the pandemic now appears, and I stress appears, to be under control here. We have limited the impact. We are now down to 0 or 1, sometimes cases per day, which I think is quite good. And our economy is starting now to reopen. And so our cruise ships have started to come back under some protocols that we've established for the cruise industry. Our hotels have reopened, and we are once again saying to the world that we're open for business. But this experience, Juliet, has demonstrated that citizenship by investment has a place in this world, particularly for small countries like ours, particularly for countries which do not have access to vast resources as other countries do. And I believe that this pandemic has demonstrated the relevance of this type of program to many of our countries. And so I was very happy. And in a word, or perhaps 3 words, citizenship by investment. That's what saved St. Kitts and Nevis economically during this pandemic and allowed us the flexibility to make sure that our people did not fall into further despair. So with all the joblessness and all the losses that we've suffered, certainly we were able to provide for our people and provide relief to them. And we were able to put in place a significant fiscal package. In fact, one of the more significant packages that was done in the English-speaking Caribbean, all on the strength of reserves that we had from this particular program.
And Mehdi, this is really important because with the COVID pandemic, the I word was mentioned a great deal, innovation. Yes, it was applied to technology, but here we have it applied in a completely different way, citizenship by investment and the economic growth that comes out of that. So as a closing comment, can you share with us any interesting programs that you've come across in other parts of the world that reflect what Prime Minister Brantley and his team have been doing in terms of improving global mobility for families and indeed investors?
Thank you, Juliet. As more countries see the benefits of attracting talented and affluent investors, more programs are being developed and launched each year, particularly in the drive to recover from the COVID crisis. A new entrance to migration space this year in Southern Europe is North Macedonia. Minimum investment of €200,000 and in 2 to 5 months acquire citizenship of a country with a visa-free score of 125 that is also an official EU candidate. So in years to come, could gain access to EU with all the associated rights and benefit, security, stable democracies, top education, world-class healthcare, real estate, and so on. Another interesting one is Turkey. Turkey's citizenship program, which was launched in 2017 and is extremely popular. Immense growth in 2020 after dropping real estate investment requirement to $250,000 USD mid-2019. Turkish citizens have visa-free access to 110 countries, including Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, many South Asian clients considering relocating business operation to Turkey owing to US-China trade wars. In terms of global mobility, wealthy investors and high net worth families realizing having guaranteed access to multiple jurisdictions is now a necessity. Investing in additional citizenship in different regions is a hedge against manifold level of volatility, creates enhanced combination of value and yield. Most options includes whole family, many extend to parents, siblings, grandparents, and the more jurisdiction a family can access, the more diversified its assets and opportunities, and the lower its exposure to country-specific risk and global volatility will be.
Sadly, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you for all your time and indeed the valuable contribution you've made to this session of Henley Partners' 15th Annual Global Citizenship Conference, in what I think it's fair to say has been an extremely thought-provoking discussion. And I'd like to extend the thanks to you, our online audience, because we appreciate your interest and your engagement in the Global Citizenship Conference. And if you're interested in attending any upcoming webinars, then please do feel free to visit the events page at henleyglobal.com. That's henleyglobal.com if you're interested in following any upcoming webinars that we have in the pipeline. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of the day, stay safe, and goodbye.